This is David Diaz, former WBC lightweight champion of the world, and you're listening to The Grueling Truth.
Welcome to The Grueling Truth Inside Boxing Show. It'll be our weekly show where we review what happened the past weekend in boxing. Look forward to what happens over the next weekend. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and I want to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Priesser.
Hello. Good to be on the show.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
It is Priesser.
Damn. Oh, well, what the heck.
Close enough.
It's the first time. I've been hit the head a lot in my life, so sometimes things flip my. But we're going to start off where every boxing show should start off, with a moron, which will be Adrian Broners. Let's talk a little bit about his fight last weekend against Ashley Theroplane. What was your opinion of the fight, and mainly what happened after the fight with the post-fight interview about him and Floyd Mayweather?
Well, from the get-go, it just looked like a mismatch on paper. Theophane was rated 65th by BoxRec going into that fight, so I didn't really expect much. Theophane, he had a solid fight with Danny Garcia not long ago when Garcia was an up-and-comer, but besides that, he hasn't really done much. And the fight played out much like it looked on paper. Broner dominated, looked like he did what he wanted to do, but I think he carried it out a little too long. Probably should have gotten him out of there, hurt him badly in the fifth, but just didn't put him away.
All right, so what's your take on him calling out Floyd Mayweather? You think there's a chance to see that fight, or does anybody want to see it?
Honestly, I think a lot of casual fans may want to see it. They're obviously both draw huge ratings. I mean, Broner Theophane actually did higher ratings with the PBC than any fight they've ever had, which is quite surprising. So I think their personalities, would be a cause for a big buildup. But I think with the hardcore fan, I think we recognize that it's a mismatch. I mean, Broner hasn't done much at 147 against somebody like Mayweather, even a Mayweather who's retired. A lot of people think he's going to come back. I just think it's a mismatch.
Yeah, I think that he may come back at some point. And really my first thought when seeing that was this would be perfect for Mayweather. It's a guy that he is bigger than, that he's obviously better than. It's a fairly safe fight for him, and he can bank a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, Mayweather's that's kind of been his route as of late. I agree. I've also heard that he's looking at Danny Garcia, which is a little bit better, but yes, if Mayweather wanted to come back and have a fight, I guess Broner would be a solid option.
Yeah, because, let's face it, I think Mayweather blows him out. I think Mayweather beats him however bad he wants to beat him.
I agree.
I can see that being a fight where Mayweather comes out and just batters him for 5 or 6 rounds until they stop the fight, or until Broner quits.
Yeah, I agree. But Mayweather making his first stoppage his first good stoppage since 2007.
Yeah. And I would say the fight I want to see, he fought a couple weeks ago, Andre Ward. They talk a lot about him fighting Sergey Kovalev. If Kovalev wins his next fight, they would be fighting hopefully in November. What's your take on Ward and Kovalev?
I think Ward-Kovalev is one of the best fights that can be made in boxing. Andre Ward, when he's active, he's pound for pound one of the best fighters in the game. Kovalev has been nothing but destructive. He's looked sensational. Knockout power. He's highly technical. Ward's highly intelligent. I just think that's one of the best fights that can be made in a division that I think is really heating up. A lot of really good prospects in the division. I really like that fight.
Yeah, this is a fight that if Ward would have been busy over the last few years instead of the promotional problems he had, I would favor Ward. But just from the time off he's had, I give Kovalev a decent chance to win this fight now.
I do too. Barrera was able to land some shots, and I think Kovalev's superior in every way. Can Ward take those shots? It's hard to tell because Ward hasn't taken many clean shots, since he reached the top at 168. The only thing we really know about his chin is he was dropped by Darnell Boone with an uppercut early in his career. He was also hurt by Kenny Kost, a guy who was like 10-0, high knockouts. That was early in his career too. It would be real interesting to see if Ward can take that, but I think Ward can outthink it.
Yeah, I do too, and that's the question. I mean, can Kovalev hit him cleanly?
I think so. Part of the reason I think so is because Kovalev, if he's got something, he's got a jab. He's got John David Jackson in his corner, who's an intelligent coach, can game plan for just about anybody. I think Kovalev does his best to try and out-jab Ward, and if he can establish that, if he can out-jab Ward, which is the big F, I think he can land. I mean, Kovalev's jab has knocked guys out. I mean, he knocked Salak out with basically a jab. So I think that I think Kovalev can land those shots.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to bring up the fact Kermit Cintron was supposed to be on tonight. He called me a couple hours ago and got his training mixed up. He's making a comeback. He's fighting May 6th, I think, in Pennsylvania. I think on a PBC card, too. I think he's on the undercard, so I don't know if the fight will be on or not. But we will have him on before his comeback fight. So I apologize to anybody that was listening or wanting to listen to Kermit. But Kermit will be on, and Kermit will probably be a fairly regular guest with us. That brings us to this weekend. Got two big fight cards. I mean, the one that's the most interesting to me is not the pay-per-view. It's the heavyweight title fight in England between heavyweight champion Prince Charles Martin. I used the term heavyweight champion a little loosely there because, I mean, I think everybody's opinion is Tyson Fury beat Klitschko. He's the champion. But he'll be defending his title against Anthony Joshua on Joshua's home turf, which neither guy we've really seen a lot of. Neither one's really fought some great competition yet. So this is a fight that, to me, is a huge mystery. What's your first take on it?
I like the fight quite a bit. It being for the IBF title is a little, can't say I care for that, but like you said, there's some question marks. I mean, Anthony Joshua's best win is against Dillian White. White had him hurt in that fight. Joshua had some rough spots, but eventually he pulled through and looked good against him. I think, what is a Chisora type guy, fringe contender type guy. And Martin, he looked pretty good against Glaskov in the little time that we saw him. It was just unfortunate that, Glaskov suffered a knee injury so early, and we didn't really get to see the full effect of his skill. So, it's like you said, there's some mystery there, but that's what adds intrigue to the bout, and I'll be tuning in.
Yeah, but you have to give Prince Charles Martin huge props, though. I know he's doing it for money, but how many guys would make their first title defense by going to England to fight an English fighter?
Yeah, that's true. You gotta. I mean, and it's pretty. You got to give a lot of credit to the British fans as well, because this guy is drawing huge ratings over there, and he's got 15 fights.
Yeah, I was watching actually a documentary about Joshua just before we did this show, and they claim, I don't know how this is possible, but they claim the fight sold out in 90 seconds.
Wow.
I don't know how a fight could sell out in 90 seconds with that many seats, but they're English. Wow. We'll let them go with it. We already kicked their ass in a war once. We'll let them have a little bit of fun. And I think the big question to me on Joshua is what happens if Martin takes him 5 or 6, 7 rounds?
Yeah, because in my opinion, Joshua looked a little gassed, early on in the White fight. I mean, I guess it may have been nerves. I'm not sure, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Granted, the fight drags out, but what if Martin wins? Martin sits atop a higher perch than he did. Yeah,
and if Joshua wins, does he try to have a huge fight in Europe against Tyson Fury? Or does he come over here and get on the PBC, from what I hear has been offered to him, to fight Deontay Wilder? Yeah, I mean, that would be a very intriguing title unification match. But with Joshua having so few fights, I think if he beats Martin, he's got a lot of domestic options available, like Hughie Fury. He's an up-and-coming British prospect. David Hay. Maybe even Chisora for, an easier title defense. Granted, Chisora keeps winning. I think he's got a lot of good British options, so I don't think he needs to make the jump to, if Wilder gets past Vetkin, I don't think he needs to make that jump immediately, but it's intriguing if it does get made. Well, and I think the one thing that's interesting now is outside, I mean, it's probably been, since Lennox Lewis fought Vitaly Klitschko. I mean, it seems like the talent at the heavyweight division is picking up where there are some interesting fights that can be made.
Yep, I absolutely agree. I mean, guys like, it's unfortunate, guys with big amateur backgrounds like Povetkin and Luis Ortiz, who really looks good. They decided to get in pros a little too late, but those are two guys, that I really like. We got some up-and-comers. Joshua, obviously, we'll see what Fury was all made, all about in the Klitschko rematch.
Well, what's your take on Lucas Brown?
Lucas Brown, I think, is solid. I think he's a good bottom top 10 type guy who could probably, feature in some solid scraps with some lower tier guys as well. I don't see him as a world beater. I don't see him overcoming, the top 5, 6, 7 guys. But I actually like who's the guy from New Zealand?
Joe. What the heck is his last name?
Yeah, can't quite figure it out.
Joseph Parker.
Yeah, Joseph Parker. He's the guy I've got my eyes on. He's got really quick hands, good pop. I think he can be. He keeps developing. I think he can be a top guy.
Yeah, the big thing about these guys is will they be willing to fight each other? And just like we said with Prince Charles Martin, Deontay Wilder is actually going to Russia to fight Alexander Povetkin, which it tells me this. I mean, maybe it's not just a money grab. Maybe these guys really believe they're that good, which in the past we've had a ton of heavyweights like the Michael Grants and stuff to get moved along, they get protected, and then when they finally get a chance, they get blown out.
Yeah. Yeah. Wilder still has some questions, which is kind of odd to say with a guy with 30-plus fights. He's still got some questions surrounding him, and I think a lot of people will give him a lot of credit if he goes to Russia and actually beats Povetkin. I think Povetkin is a pretty damn good heavyweight. I've watched a lot of his fights, real solid technically, doesn't do a lot wrong. I mean, he's got very few weaknesses. I think if Wilder goes over and beats him, which it will be in a loud, hostile crowd. I've watched a lot of Russian fights as of late. It's that soccer culture is kind of permeating into the fans, and it's loud. And I think Wilder going over there and beating him will be a good stiff test.
Yeah, this is similar to when Rocky Balboa went to fight Ivan Drago over in Russia.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I've watched those movies so many times, Jeremiah, that sometimes I think they were real. So, so what's your prediction on Prince Charles Martin against Anthony Joshua?
All right, this is a tough one again because it's there's some question marks surrounding the fight, but Joshua looks to have the greater upside. So I'm going to predict that he KOs Martin in 4. Okay,
I think this fight is dang near impossible to call. On the outside looking at it, you would go with Joshua just because he looks the part.
Right.
I think Charles Martin's also a lefty, which we don't know how Joshua's going to deal with that. I think there's a lot of things that play in here. I'm going to go with Joshua also. I'm going to go with Joshua in a knockout, 4 or 5 rounds. But to me, this fight's almost a toss-up just because of so many unknown factors in the fight.
It is. And I think it's one of many kind of toss-up heavyweight matchups, which is good for the division. Wilder Povetkin's close, Martin Joshua's close, Fury Klitschko in the rematch. I think that's close.
It'd be nice if one of these fights could actually be exciting, though.
Yeah, hopefully.
I don't remember an exciting heavyweight fight in a long time.
Yeah, I think there's been a few good ones on some PBC cards. Kind of drawing blanks at the moment. I remember Povetkin to Kam wasn't bad. Mike Perez versus the Russian guy who ended up being hospitalized, Magomed. Yeah, that was a pretty solid fight. Yeah, but not pretty few and far in between.
All right, so that'll bring us to Saturday night's pay-per-view, the rubber matchup between Manny Pacquiao, Timothy Bradley. We'll go to the undercard first. Yevgeny Gradovich against Oscar Valdez. What's your take on that fight?
I think Gradovich, since losing his IBF title at 126, really hasn't looked he's looked less than spectacular. He's still a solid fighter. But I think Valdez has greater upside, and I think he decisions Gradovich, who's a tough guy, at least. Okay,
so what's your pick on that fight?
Valdez, unanimous decision.
Okay, I'm going to agree with you on that. And we go to Gilberto Ramirez against Arthur Abraham. Abraham's been one of my fighters for a long time. Most of his fights are fairly exciting. What's your take on it?
I think it's a pretty good matchup. I think, as I said earlier, I think Arthur Abraham is kind of one of those guys. Him and Felix Sturm, you're expecting them to just kind of lose it at some time. To see Abraham come to America is a positive sign. Maybe he's looking for, bigger challenges since he is nearing the end of his career. Ramirez looks like a solid prospect. I saw him live. He's got good pop, good work rates. If Ramirez takes a page out of Stieglitz's book, I think he can stop Abraham. But at the moment, I think I'm taking, just based on experience, I think I'm going to take Arthur Abraham via decision.
Yeah, same here. Then we get to the main event, Manny Pacquiao, Timothy Bradley, third fight. I think the first fight, most people thought that Pac-Man won, even though Bradley got the decision. The second fight, I think Bradley was looking better than he did in the first fight. Oh, man, you're not getting arrested, are you? Because that's going to cut into the show.
No, sorry. Fire truck drove by.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure the cops weren't coming to get you. We had that happen one time with our last boxing host. That's how we just switch it up. But
no, I'm good.
But in the second fight, as I said, I think Bradley was doing better than he did the first fight until he got the calf injury. Bradley's got a new trainer, Teddy Atlas. What's your first impressions of this one?
Well, first impressions are it's an unnecessary rubber match. I think Pacquiao won. I thought he won both fights pretty clearly. Personally, I think this is an attempt for Top Rank to just kind of keep the money in-house. I think Pacquiao had better options. I think Bradley had better options. But since they are fighting, I am going to take Bradley via decision. I think Bradley was a little bit better in his last outing against Rios. I know Rios is a world beater. Yeah, he hasn't proven much at 147. But Bradley seemed to encompass, typically he fights in one way. He's either coming at you or he's boxing. But he looked like he kind of combined the two, the best he ever had in his last fight. And I think Atlas is going to have him jabbing and moving a lot. And I think he ekes out a decision.
Yeah, I think Bradley wins the fight also. I think Bradley is to a point in his career where this fight is much more important to him than it is Pacquiao. I think for Pacquiao, I don't think necessarily a top-ranked money grab. I think it's a money grab for Pac-Man. I don't think, from what I heard, he was offered fights against Terrence Crawford and Amir Khan. Didn't want them. He wanted to go straight to Bradley. And I think a lot of that is Bradley does not have the punch that can hurt him. Right. But I think Bradley will outwork him. So I guess we agree on everything so far, though.
Yep. Well, we're gonna have to find something here. But
so we're all either going to be stupid or we're all going to be geniuses. Now, I will tell you this. Everybody can follow us at Grilling Truth, Twitter. We run polls on there. We did a boxing poll today. And the boxing poll was who was the greatest fighter in boxing history. We had Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, Henry Armstrong, and Floyd Mayweather. Now, Muhammad Ali did win, and he won by a large amount. But believe it or not, second place was Floyd Mayweather, who got twice as many votes as Sugar Ray Robinson. What's your take on that?
Well, obviously I disagree. I think, as great as I think Floyd Mayweather is, I wholly respect his ability. I just think the era in which he fought in, the way he kind of conducted his career, I just don't really think there's much of a comparison with somebody like Robinson, who fought when there was one champion per division. Whereas Mayweather's era, it's as great as his statistics are, they're a bit inflated. These 23, 24 world champions that he beats. It's inflated by the fact that there are 68 world titles in 17 divisions, whereas Robinson didn't have that luxury. And on strength of schedule, which is my most important criteria, I think Robinson is significantly better than I think he has one of the greatest resumes ever. Between him, Sam Langford, and Harry Greb, I think Robinson is clear-cut number one in terms of the fighters that we polled.
Now, do you think he's never won over Muhammad Ali?
I do.
Here's my take on this, all right? And I got a friend, you probably know, John Iceman Scully. But John Scully's point, and I agree with him completely on this because I've done some shows, top 10 in each position. But it's really hard for me to say a guy is the greatest fighter of all time if I've never seen him fight. And with Sugar Ray Robinson, other than I think there's a fight against Bobby Dykes, which is out there that you can watch, there's nothing from when he was in his prime as a welterweight.
Well, you might be.
Where I watched a lot of these other guys, and it's hard for me to say to somebody's hands down the greatest, and I haven't seen them.
Yeah, I certainly agree that video footage provides a lot, but there have been leaking some Robinson welterweight fights. I think there's one against Fusari. I think there's about four or five from his welterweight days. Unfortunately, not many of them are very long. And I agree that video footage adds a lot to the conversation, but just glancing at somebody's resume, if you have any doubts as to whether or not they won, you can always check the eyewitness accounts. I think that resume, more so than video footage, I think is a determining factor for me at least.
All right, so you got a guy like Sam Langford. Is he one of the top 10 heavyweights that ever lived?
Top 10 heavyweights? No. I would say he's top 15, top 20. He fought Harry Wills, Joe Jeanette, McVeigh. He fought these guys tons and tons of times. But Sam Langford is a guy who fought a legend in every division that he traversed. So at lightweight, he fought Joe Gons, top 5 lightweight. At 147, he fought Barbados Joe Walcott, who was a top 5, top 10 welterweight to some. At middleweight, he actually fought Jack Johnson as a middleweight. But at middleweight, he fought Stanley Ketchel. At light heavyweight, he fought Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. And then up to heavyweight, he fought all sorts of good fighters in between then, like Jack Blackburn. But at heavyweight, he fought Wills. He fought Wills. He fought Jeanette. He fought McVeigh a ton of times. His resume is just outstanding.
So my question is this, though. When you watch a guy like a Jack Johnson on the film they got, do you think he could be a top 10 heavyweight today?
Today, he's got pretty good size for his division, but that is a tough question.
And see, that's my problem when I do the top 10 stuff, because I always put some of them guys in, but my big point is this. When I watch a Jack Dempsey, Jack Dempsey's resume, or a Joe Louis. Joe Louis against Muhammad Ali, I don't know what your opinion is, but to me, that's a mismatch, because Louis's feet were slow, and guys that were boxers like Billy Conn gave him all kind of trouble. You put Ali in front of him, I think it's going to be even worse.
Yeah, and I understand that argument. I definitely do. But when you watch the rematch with there's a historian named Monty Cox who made a solid argument about Joe Louis beating Muhammad Ali. Do I think Muhammad Ali beats Joe Louis? I do, and because of the reasons you named. But Joe Louis did adapt pretty well in the rematch. He jabbed a lot more. The
rematch was 4 years later. Billy Conn had been in the military, hadn't fought at all. Joe Louis was still fighting exhibitions, which the government screwed him over for, and ended up breaking him when he got older because they wanted to tax him on stuff that he'd given to them as a gift. But I believe that's the story I read. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. So I still think that if Joe Louis had rematched him, even 4 months, 5 months, 6 months from then, I think he still could have beat him. His strategy was just simply better. He took Khan's jab away, jabbed a ton, cut the ring off a bit better, landed power shots.
Yeah, but see, I think the fact that we're arguing about whether a 175-pound light heavyweight gave him trouble and then he could adjust is a lot different than fighting Muhammad Ali.
I agree, yeah.
Because Ali was not the greatest puncher in the world, but he wasn't the worst either.
No.
And he was fast as hell. And, really, if you look early in his career, from what I consider his prime up until they put him in jail or basically stripped him for 3 years, the only guy that really gave him a lot of trouble, other than the one Henry Cooper shot, was Doug Jones, who I still claim, when I watched that fight, I've got Ali winning at 7-3. I think it was just the fact that people were shocked that Jones was even in the fight with him, that they gave him more credit than they probably should have.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree. I mean, Ali looked tremendous before the whole Vietnam War thing. I consider him probably the most unbeatable heavyweight there is. I mean, he's fleet-footed and had a great jab. Yeah, I can see your arguments, in regards to Joe Louis. I think Joe Louis had a little bit of Ken Norton in him when he wanted to, whereas he could parry the jab and jab with him, which gave Ali trouble, though.
Yeah, but remember this, that's an older career. Ali.
Right, yeah, that's what I just said.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, it's all good.
Hey, we agreed on too much stuff. I thought maybe we had something we could roll with there.
I know. There are plenty of boxers, plenty of matchups. Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll think of one. And on our Twitter, like I said, @GrillingTruth, we're going to put one up tonight. Who wins, Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali? Just because it always blows my mind, all the people who think Mike Tyson would have won that fight. And then we'll report back on the results next Thursday night. And we will also review the fights that just happened. We will probably have an interview with a former legend. And Jeremiah, any final words?
Nope. I suppose just a few. There are a few undercard matches I just want to mention real quickly. A guy named Alexander Gvozdyk is fighting Muhammadi. I think he's a prospect to look out for. Ukrainian Olympian, very good fighter. I think Konstantin Ponomarav versus Brad Solomon's a very good and intriguing 147-pound match. And there's some solid fights on the British card as well.
Underneath the Charles Martin fight, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But, all right. Well, hopefully you had a good time. Hopefully everybody had a good time listening. We'll do this every week, so check out thegruelingtruth.net. Just want to remind people we have an interview coming up later tonight with former St. Louis Cardinal offensive lineman, 3-time Pro Bowler Luis Sharp. Tomorrow night we'll have Mike and Aaron's Sports World, where we'll recap the last week in sports. Look forward to the next week. And then me and Jeremiah will be back next Thursday night for our next episode of the Inside Boxing Show on the Grilling Truth Network. Make sure you check out our sponsors, Gridiron Mo, SteelbergBox.com. And once again, check us out, grillingtruth.net. And you can also get our shows on Spreaker, iTunes, and Stitcher. Should be on iHeart soon. So for Jeremiah, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.